I hope everyone can see my screen. Currently I'm on my VS Code on my machine, and this VS Code is accessing an SSH session in a server running in Etsy, so that I can deploy my instance. So just open my terminal. Everything's running inside a virtual environment. So I'm showing you the final state that we will attempt to get into. And after that, I'm going to start from scratch as you're starting as well. But just to show you what's the intended result. So I've already set a bunch of breakpoints in the code. For those that use VS Code and know how to use the debugger, you'll see in the left the debugging part, and you'll see that once I run this, it starts everything. It is a breakpoint that I've put there on purpose. So you'll need to start up the code and let it jump through and let it go through all the things. So you have here, this is running on my remote machine where my OSM is running and where my component is running locally, not inside a container, and is accessing all the services. So you'll be able to see here that it has a subscription task. So this is accessing Kafka. Also, there's a Mongo connection in there, so it's connected to the database. And if I do here, open a bash here. So I have a bash here. So if we go to qctl-nosm get pods, we will see here that I don't have any arrow running. So let me just increase this so you can see it. There's no arrow running in here, so that arrow is not there. And if I do a qctl OSM, I want to mimic something. So whenever LCM is restarted, it will connect to our row. It will ask for the version. So let's try to trigger that. So scale deployment, LCM. Let's reduce the replicas to 0. So if we get here, you'll see that LCM is terminating. And if I bring it back up, you'll see that the breakpoint was hit again because it got the version from a row. And it's running. Okay. So this is one of the multiple setups that you can get into OSM in order to be able to see what's going on in there. So let me stop this one and let's go to a blank one. Okay. So let me stop my sharing and switch to my terminal. Okay. I need to share my entire screen. Okay. So this was the machine where we were at. This is the machine that we will work on. So if you look in here, we have the install OSM script, and I have everything running. So you'll see here that I have my arrow in here, everything's in here. Okay, so let's start. So first thing that I'm going to do is to do a kubectl -osm scale deployment arrow replicas 0. So what this basically does is it removes all the pods, all the arrow pods that are running from Kubernetes. So there's no interference from any of the pods running there. I'm gonna paste the command in there so everyone can see it. I'm going to also put this in some slides so that it can be shared afterwards. So don't worry about getting all the things. So if you look into it, there's no arrow in there anymore. So that's okay. Let me just clean it up. So now I need to clone arrow. So git web. So I'm following my own instructions. So the URL for the repository is there. So let's go here, increase a bit the font so everyone can see it. So git clone. So now I have a row in here. This is straight from the master branch. So if you get here, we'll see everything. So if I do a git log, you'll see let's add from master. So let me clean this up. Oh, didn't hear that, Mark. Okay, good to know. Okay, so from here, I also want to bring some changes that I made. So this, not this one. So let's go to Garrett. Let me check my changes. So standard. So as I've said earlier, we are on the process of adding talks into our row. So if this big change that is not fully complete, it is waiting for me to add the coverage reports. So, but it's already usable, and the parts that I want from here are usable by all of us. Before that, let me just do one thing that I forgot. So this, you don't forget to do this, and because you'll be changing your environment, so you'll want to keep all the changes there. So user dot name, my name is a username in Etsy, this one, and my email is don't know how to type anymore. Okay, so basically if I go to get all, yeah. So as you can see here, my changes are in there. Okay, so now let's pull the change. So if you go to Garrett, you'll see that you have multiple ways to get that one. I'm going to do a pull into my repository. So if I get here, just need to copy that one and pull it. Okay. Let me just paste here. You don't need to have, actually, this one is better because you don't need to have my username in there. Sorry about that. Okay, so why did I pull this? Basically, I want these files here, so requirements txt and requirements dev. This will have all the files that you'll need to to install the environment. So let's see what we can do. So I'm using Python 3.8 in this machine. I'm going to create a virtual environment. So this way enables me, for those that don't use virtual environments, it enables me to run multiple projects in here without having all the dependencies mixed up and breaking other things. So I'm going to create a virtual environment in here, and I'm going to activate it. So virtual env bin active. So now I'm inside my virtual environment. All the changes in terms of Python that I'll do here will remain inside the virtual environment and will not pollute anything. So for example, if I look into which Python I'm using the one from virtual environment. If I look into pip, I'm looking into the one that is inside the virtual environment. Okay. So I'm also going to get a file from here. So this is something that I'm working on currently. So where is it? I'm going to provide this as well. So I'm going a bit fast, but I'm going to write the commands and give you the file in a bit. So just give me a second. Okay, so let's go by parts. Paste bin. So this is the file that I'm using, and after creating that file, so I've put that file inside in install.sh, and in order for us to use it, you'll need to do this. You'll need to give it permissions to execute. Okay, so now let's look into the file that I've created here. So first thing, this is a simple bash file. What it does is it upgrades pip inside the virtual environment, install all the dependencies that Arrow needs, installs all the dependencies that are needed to do development, and installs all the components inside Arrow. Arrow is a complex module inside OSM because it has Arrow in itself, which is the framework. It has a plugin system that allows you to create different plugins in order to access VIMs and SDN controllers and WIM controllers. So it requires a bit of, let's call it machinery to have it working. So it installs the Arrow plugin. It installs all the Vim plugins that are there. So you have your OpenStack, you have your VMware, AWS, Azure, and others that might come. And it installs all the SDN controller plugins that you might also need. So I'm putting this into a file so I don't have to write all these commands by hand. So now just need to do install.sh, and it should install everything into the virtual environment. So it's installing everything. It's going to take a while. So while it's doing this, I'm going to review here the question. So, okay, so Mark's already taken care of. So let me open another shell inside there. So while it's doing that, let's look into the pods. So we have everything running except our row. Also, we will require endpoints in order to access those. And when a container is inside Kubernetes, it does it by name. So if the RO is in there and it needs to access Kafka, it has a DNS resolver that will resolve requests to Kafka. Here, it doesn't know where Kafka is. So if I do a telnet Kafka, and it cannot resolve Kafka. So there's a solution for all this, of course. So we'll need to go into etc hosts, and we are going to change all this in order to have it exposing those names. So the same way that localhost resolves to 127.0.0.1, we'll have Kafka and MongoDB translating into real IPs. So I'm going to fetch something first. So there's also another thing that I forgot. So there's this pending change to DevOps that adds a file that allows you to expose Kubernetes changes. In this case, I'm going to change the file. I'm going to paste it here, but just going to copy the file because I'm going to be making changes to it. And those changes are, so let me just get out of our role. I want to debug kate.yaml. I'm going to do a set paste. So basically, using set paste is just that it keeps the indentation that the file uses. So when I paste, it doesn't break. Okay. And now I want, so I'll need Kafka. I will need Keystone. Okay, that's okay. I don't want to publish arrow changes here, so I'm going to just comment it out. Sorry, I'm not a Vim wizard, so don't know all the commands to do this properly. So I'm just going to save it. So just comment it out arrow because I don't need arrow. Now, this will expose all the endpoints that we need. So we applied it, we have the services in there, kubectl -OSM endpoints. Okay, so we have the Kafka debug, we have Mongo debug. So Mongo is not needed because it's Kubernetes one, so we don't need that one. So we can just remove it by get service, delete service. We can just remove this one. You can actually use the cluster IP. Let's use the cluster IPs. Maybe it's better. So if I do a curl now to the Kafka, which is this one, 1992, not a curl, telnet, sorry, not that. it's connected. Okay. So now that we have all those IPs exposed, let's edit the etc hosts. Let me just check. So everyone lost at this point, or is it okay for now?
Seems to be okay.
Okay. So I'll continue. If you cannot follow along, there will be slides that I'll prepare with this information. So you'll be able to follow along but using those slides as well. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Actually, I'm going to open a new tab so I can just switch between them. So the bin etc hosts. So just fetch here. So Mongo is one of the services that we'll need. So let's put it here. And the two names that normally are the three names that are normally used within OSM are these ones. So putting in these ones. And for Kafka, it's this one. And even I have to look up into the documentation sometimes. This one. Okay. So So this should be what you put inside. So sudo etc hosts. So if you add those, you'll be able to do this. This one. So in order to check if you have
Eduardo, I'm just going to interject for 1 second, Mats. If you could paste the command that you used to be able to get all the IP addresses there, the
sure.
queue control get service. Yeah. Just so that everybody has a copy of that, just in case.
Okay, so now that we have all the services and that we can now resolve the names, so let's check if we have connectivity. This actually stopped installing successfully. So let's check if you have connectivity. In order to check if you have connectivity with Kafka, we use telnet. So telnet, Kafka is running on port 9092. Okay, so 9092. It connected, it is okay. So Kafka is working and we have connectivity. In order to check if we can reach Mongo, we will use netcat. So once again, netcat, zero value verbose, and we want to access through Mongo, and the port is 27017. So this one. We're trying to use this one. Oh, connection refused. That's nice. Why?
I think
So-
it's MongoDB gates. So you are missing a dash gates there.
Sure, but I'm trying to use the. Okay, so what have I put inside the hosts? MongoDB, MongoDB Kate. Oh, should work. Let me just check one thing. Okay, so when in doubt, you can also check check the deployments. So LCM, for example, LC deployment. If you go to LCM, you'll be able to see all of that information in there. So there's already here. Okay. So this is the command that LCM uses in order to check if Mongo is reachable or not. So let's copy the command. Okay. Also put in that one. Okay, so version timeout. Okay. So probably the IP that I'm using is not the most accurate. So let's go into services. Let's get the other IP. Okay, so this one succeeded, so we don't need this one as well. -SM. Let's delete the service. So Mongo debug is not needed. So that's also something to comment out from that script. Okay, so I have a bunch of commands here that I need to paste so you guys can check. Okay, so IP of Kafka appears as none. So you're probably seeing this one, right? Rafael? You're seeing the cluster IP. Okay, so you should also have this one, the Kafka debug endpoint. Okay, so you missed a step. So you'll need to apply this change. So just copy the file, comment out, so comment out the arrow and Mongo part, and then qctl -nsm apply -f and file. So if you do this, the commands that I've just posted, you'll get all the debug endpoints that we have here. So Kafka debug, Mongo debug, no, because I don't want that one. MySQL debug and Zookeeper debug. Okay, that will give you those node ports for you to access it. Mongo, as we've seen, we don't need the Mongo one because it's a charm based one, so we don't need that one. So I'm going to update the etc hosts to reflect that. So use this one. Do not use the MongoDB endpoint. So now if I repeat my Okay, it's correct, and I'm able to use the name instead of the IP. Okay, so commands to verify connectivity. So for Kafka, you'll do telnet Kafka 1992. For Mongo, we'll use netcat MongoDB 27, right? 27. So this one. So those two shall show you if you have connectivity with the services within the services that are running in the Kubernetes of OSM. So, okay. So this part close. So now we have everything installed. We have connectivity with the services running inside OSM, Kubernetes. Now there's only one more change that I need to do. Okay. So most projects inside OSM have two ways of being configured. So you can either pass in those changes in environment variables, or you can configure them through the configuration file. In the case of RO, the configuration files are inside ngro, OSM-MR, which is the module, and ro.cfg. So this is the file that you can change in order to change the configurations that you'll be using. Okay, so I want to change my directories because I'm not running inside a Kubernetes pod, so those things will not be in there. Okay, so my static tier can be in there. I have no problems with that. Also need to change my storage. Okay, so you want to now I'm gonna keep this inside a row, so local. If you see here, there's already comments from other devs that just leave their information in here that you can reuse. Okay. Let's also put this one as well. So home, we want to arrow local storage. Okay. So with these, we have changed all the local directories that it needs to access. So you'll not see strange messages in the log. Okay, let's save it. And I also need to make my local -storage -Kafka. So -p will create all the directories that are in the path. So it will create local, then it will create the local storage, then it will create local storage Kafka. So, you'll need to So, Jaime, from where are you running the commands? You need to be running it from the machine where OSM is running as well. because that's internal to the machine. So I'll come back into James' problem when we get there. Okay, so I've changed everything. I just want to reinstall so ngro. So we have all the configurations in store. Okay, so what I did, so I added ngro OSM-MR .cfg, change directories to local. Also, I've reinstalled ngro. Okay. So this is where the fun part begins. So now should be able to run my ngro. So there's a local Docker file here that you can check in order to see what's the entry point. So just going to get that file in order to see the entry point. So Python -u. So -u is to have the unbuffered output. So everything will just be printed directly into the console. And I want to start it in the ngro module on the ro main function. So if I start it, okay, so it started correctly. It had a problem because it's not an existing file path, but it worked with it anyway. Created. So it started. So we also need to do another. Okay, so ro is running, but we have a problem here, which is other components that use the HTTP interface don't know where ro is, because Kubernetes has the internal DNS name, and it won't be able to reach the local ro that we have through the ro entry that it has. So we'll need to update that. So let's see how we can do it. So kubectl -osm describe deployment LCM. So LCM depends on this. So if you see here, it interacts with ro by name or by DNS entry, and actually and here on the environment variable, it also uses ro by name. So we'll need to change that. How can we do that? Okay, so before I progress, let me just show what I changed in here. So I changed storage path. So you should update this one. So under here, you'll see it. just create a local storage so you know where it is, where it's putting all the data. And actually, this one does not matter. So disregard this one, because it's only for local. So there's no need to change this one. So just change this one from storage, and you should be okay. Okay, so there's one thing that I need to do before I proceed, which is I need to get my IP address. So just running ifconfig on ENS3 to get my IP. Be wary, you might not have ENS3, you might have ETH0. I'm not sure what interface is in your VMs. So you'll need to just store this one for later. So copy it and kubectl -n OSM. Let's edit the deployment of LCM. Okay. So I need to change it in two places. So our role needs to be changed to our local IP, and we also need to change the init container. Otherwise, we won't be able to get LCM running. So if I do watch -n1 kubectl bots, we'll see it starting the other one and terminating. So in order to change it, so kubectl -n OSM edit deployment LCM. If we see here, my LCM is running, and if I switch, you'll see here that I have one get from ro/version, and it came from the IP of the pod. Just know that this subnet is from Kubernetes and not from the outside world. So this is proof that RO can access it. LCM can access RO. Also, if it's running, it's because it passed the test on the init container. So if I go into the if I go here, you'll also see that the LCM pod will only start if these conditions are fulfilled. and that means being able to access our role in this IP. So if I lost anyone in the process? Don't see anyone asking for help in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to continue. So now we have our row running in a place where we can reach it and do our changes, and then we have our Kubernetes without our row that can reach our row. So let me close this one. Okay, so I'm gonna stop my row running because it doesn't have any debugger, doesn't have anything for me to have visibility into what's happening in there. So now I'm gonna switch into my Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to change this. So this is my old machine. I'm gonna access my secondary machine. So that we can see how we enable debugging. Okay, so right now I'm inside. I want to open a folder, and the folder that I want to open is a row. Okay, it just reloads everything with what I want. Okay, shows me that there are changes, of course, so I don't need to worry about those right now. So let's open the debugging part, and I want to create launch the JSON file. So it doesn't show me any Python, so I'll want to install a few things here. So let me just refine this into Python. So I want IntelliCode because I want to be able to change my code. This is not mandatory, but this one is. So the Python debugger, it's mandatory, so we are able to see what we are running. So I have all of those installed. I'm not able to see them, so let's do it by hand. Launch JSON. So anyone else having the same problem as I have? That you're not able to, after installing the plugins, able to see the drop down that says Python? Let's try. Okay, now it updated to see my Python venv. That's good to know. Okay, so now if I delete this, let's delete this. Okay, so apparently it didn't reload the. Okay, so we want to interact with basically the same endpoint that we put in our Python command in order to run the module. So OSM-MR arrow_main. So this is what we are going to do. Basically, we'll create a file under the arrow folder where you'll be able to add new things if you need to. Let's close this. Don't need this, but I do need to change here some things. So main entry point for arrow is arrow main. So if you go in here, you'll see lots of code. So don't need to worry about that. But I want to put something here so I know that my breakpoints is working, and I'll be able to put more breakpoints in the future if I need to. So breakpoint is here. Let's check the debugger works. Okay, breakpoint was it. After this, so you'll be able to put breakpoints in other places. So let's see, where's version? Do control. Okay, so if you check here, so this is the endpoint where LCM that LCM will call. So let's close this. Let's let it jump. It's okay. So arrow seems to be running. Let's see if LCM can do the same thing. So kubectl -n OSM. Let's scale the deployment of LCM. Let's put replicas to 0, then replicas to 1. This should trigger the pod to disappear and Kubernetes to make a new instance. And as you've seen, it triggered the breakpoint. If you don't advance, if you come here, so OSM pods. Actually, LCM is already running, but if you wait too long, it will time out and it will die. So I don't want that. So let it run, and you're able to see what happened here. So I'm going to trigger this by hand. So if I do curl localhost to 990/row. Actually, fast didn't stop there. Oh, arrow version. Sorry. If I do this, it will trigger the breakpoint. You'll be able to see the different variables that you have. So basically, a debugger that you can use. So this is more or less what you need to do to put arrow or other projects under a debugger. If you see here, you'll be able to see everything. I prefer this a bit better than GDB or other debuggers. So this is one way of doing it. I also like the PyCharm one, so I can show that one if we still have time. So I can show that one if you want to see it. It's almost the same thing, so don't know if you want to see it. Let me just check if there are problems. So anyone having problems? And also, Mark, did I show everything that you wanted to see, or is there?
Pretty much, yes. I mean, the main thing was, being able to figure out how to, step inside something with a debugger.